Welcome, fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and today we're talking about spoilers again. Now, we're nearing the end of the spoiler season, so we've probably only got one more video coming after this, but we will be following up official spoilers with our top 10 cards of the set, as well as some sleeper hits that we think people are overlooking. So there's more videos coming for sure as we lead into Kaldheim. And we've also got something really cool going on where Thursday, January 28th, when the set launches on my Twitch channel, I'll be doing a community sealed event at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to get involved with that and you want to be part of helping me craft the very first sealed deck on the channel, we're letting the community really pull a lot of weight in making decisions about what should go in the deck. And that's going to be a ton of fun as the first Kaldheim limited event we ever play. We'll be following that up with tons of drafting, and then the standard deck lists are going to start coming into play really quickly after that. So we've got a lot of content coming, but today we're getting through one of the last rounds of spoilers. These are all of the cards that were announced on Monday, and we're going to start with the commons. So first off, we've got Craven Hulk, as well as Shackles of Treachery. Now, Craven Hulk is a 4/4 for 4. It's a giant coward, and it can't block alone. So this guy is decent limited fodder, right? It's relevant in that it's a giant. It can go in the giants deck and help that deck kind of curve out where this is a common and it's pretty easy to get a hold of. The fact that it can't block alone is kind of a bummer, but if your deck is aggressive enough and you're just trying to swing in, you don't really care about blocking, this could be okay. It's also worth noting that in Constructed, the fact that this is a coward is a strict downside. You have cards like Kargad Intimidator that can make it so that this creature can't block without even having to use its ability on it. So that kind of stinks. But in Limited, if you're just really looking to get in there for damage or add some synergies for a giant deck, this guy's okay. As far as Shackles of Treachery, this is 1 red and 2 for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. Until end of turn, it gains haste, and whenever this creature deals damage, destroy target equipment attached to it. So we see variations of this card in pretty much every set, right? It's this set's obligatory take a thing for a turn and try to swing for the win. Now, obviously, we'll be able to get extra value out of this if there are sacrifice themes within the set, things that we can sacrifice the creature to so they don't get it back. And in that kind of scenario, this card can be decently powered. But we've got the added benefit here of if you happen to be up against an equipment deck, with equipment being such a seemingly pushed archetype in Kaldheim Limited, being able to kill the equipment that's attached to the thing you steal after you swing with it, after you do whatever damage you do with it, and possibly trade with one of their creatures, seems like some really cool gravy for a 3-drop that does this. So it'll be interesting to see just how prevalent equipment is and how much a card like this matters. Moving on, we've got Brine Barrow Intruder and Invoke the Divine. Now, Brine Barrow Intruder is a 1/2 for 1. It's got flash, it's a human rogue, and when it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2 attack until end of turn. Now, we've seen a card like this in Zendikar Rising already, and it didn't get much play. The difference is that was a 1/1, whereas this is a 1/2, but that one milled 2 cards, whereas this one doesn't. So I don't really feel like this card is all that great. It's kind of more the same. That being said, the extra point of toughness could be relevant in a limited format, and being able to potentially trade with something with this while saving another blocker of yours when your opponent's attacking you with a high-powered creature could make all the difference. So maybe this gets included as like a 22nd, 23rd card in the right decks that want to utilize tricks like that. As far as Invoke the Divine, this is a 3-mana instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment, you gain 4 life. I think this card is easily overlooked at first. The fact that you gain 4 life is gravy, but this set is pushing runes, it's pushing sagas, there's actually 20 sagas, and then it's pushing equipment, so as well as vehicles. So and treasures. So there's like so many targets for this to hit that I think in a set like this, a card like this does go up in value. I still don't think it's like an auto include, it's automatically a good piece of removal or anything like that. I do think it's sideboard material, or at best like the 22nd or 23rd card, but I do think it's more valuable than most cards like this in most sets because of what else is in this set. So definitely a card that could see some play. The last common of the day was Way Down. Now this is 1 black mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. I think this spell is pretty good. One mana removal has traditionally been really great, even if it has downside. Being able to give any creature -3/-3, get around indestructibility and things like that is pretty powerful for only 1 mana. It's in a lot of ways strictly better than even a lightning bolt, as long as you're not worried about doing damage to the player's head. And having to exile a creature from your graveyard is not such a bad cost as long as you actually have creatures in your graveyard. So if you're jamming this into a deck that is heavy on creatures, that can consistently expect to have at least a creature in their graveyard that they don't mind exiling, then this card is really good. I think this will actually see a lot of play in Limited moving forward. Moving on, we've got 2 uncommons. Now the first is what I call Chiller Pillar. We haven't seen the English language version of this card yet, so I'm not sure what the translation of the name is, but I'm just going to call it Chiller Pillar. This is basically a strictly better Icy Manipulator if you're running it in a snow deck. Now this is 3 mana, 1 blue and 2 colorless. It's a snow artifact. You can pay 1 snow mana and tap it to tap target artifact or creature. So not in every way, but in a lot of ways, this is strictly better than Icy. Obviously, you can only tap an artifact or creature, not any permanent, right? And it costs 1 less, but it does require snow mana to use, and it also does require blue. So I think in the right deck that's built to accommodate a card like this, this can be strictly better than Icy Manipulator. You do have to somewhat build around it. I do love how much snow is getting pushed in these sets. Like, this card seems really fun. In Limited, it's great control, and it's also a way to kind of clear the way to get those final points of damage in if you're trying to just get there for a win by getting rid of their blocker. But more important than that, it's great control to keep your opponent from swinging with their best creature every turn. And that's super powerful in a Limited environment, especially with this being, you know, decently costed like it is. So the real question is, will this card see constructed play? And that's hard to say. I think the snow decks are going to be really powerful, and it's absolutely possible for a card like this to end up being a staple in a sort of snow control deck. The fact that we've seen already the legendary artifact that you can tap to let you play a snow permanent from your graveyard makes this card a lot better, because this is removal that is a snow permanent. So it's one of the only pieces of removal you can actually return from your graveyard in that way. So I think this card could be really powerful even in constructed, just because snow is getting pushed so heavily, it seems. The other uncommon of the day was what we'll call the first Snowman. Now this is a Simic Saga. This is 1 blue and 1 green, and chapter 1 tells you to mill 3 cards. Chapter 2 allows you to return up to 2 snow permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. And Chapter 3 lets you choose up to 3 cards in each graveyard, and their owners shuffle those cards into their libraries. This does a lot. It's really a matter of how much what it does matters, right? Being able to mill cards and then get 2 of those cards into your hand, if you're running enough snow permanents, could be really powerful. In a way, it's sort of like drawing 2 cards, but with an added element of card selection, where you sort of get to choose what you draw as long as you're choosing from the things that are in your graveyard. So in a way, it can be strictly better than drawing 2 cards for only 2 mana, which can be powerful if it's built around properly. What I hate about this card is the fact that it's not a snow permanent itself. If this was a snow enchantment saga, it would be amazing. You could run it in a strictly snow deck, and even if you hit one of these, you could bring it back, and that could be really, really powerful. As it stands, it still could be really, really good, right? The added value in Chapter 3 of being able to take things that their opponent wants in their graveyard, such as creatures they want to escape, or things that they want to play from their graveyard in some other way, like in a recursion deck, is nice gravy in this way, while also letting you take the things that are in your graveyard that you don't want to be there, things you can't bring back, like snow permanents and such, and putting them back in your deck. Like, you can take other copies of the first Snowman and put it back into your deck so that you can get to draw it again and replay it, and it'll never be a snow permanent that you can get back with Chapter 2, so you don't really want it in the graveyard to begin with. So there's a lot of cool things this card can do. I guess it remains to be seen how much milling yourself 3 cards really matters. If Snow and Self-Mill can kind of synergize in the same deck into something that's powerful, this could absolutely see constructed play. In just the right limited deck where you're really, really high on Snow permanents, this could also see some limited play, but you really need to build around it to make it work. Moving on, we have the first rare of the day. Now, the first couple rares are cards that we saw sort of leak earlier in the spoiler season, but we've got them officially announced now. So this first one is Dragonskin Berserker. Now, this is a 2/2 human Berserker for 2 mana. It's got First Strike, makes it so boast abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control, and it has Boast, pay 1 red and 4, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. This thing does a lot. Okay, first of all, a 2/2 First Striker for 2 is on rate and really good on its own, right? But the fact that you can boast it for 5 mana and make a 5/5 red dragon creature token is awesome. And you don't need to synergize by having extra dragons in play just to be able to pay the boast cost. It's going to be expensive, but you can use the boast to make a 5/5 flyer for 5 mana just by attacking. And that alone is pretty powerful. But when you add into it the fact that all of your boast abilities now cost 1 less when you have a dragon in play, or for each dragon in play, it gets kind of crazy, right? Because every time you boast, you're making that boast ability cost less and less. And not only that, you're making all of your other creatures' boast abilities cost less. And I think that's the part that's really overlooked. If this is pushed in a deck with dragons and boast creatures, now all of your boast abilities start becoming ridiculously cheap. You start generating an entire board worth of dragons, and it can just be really, really powerful for a 2-drop that's fine even without the synergy. So I really, really like this card. I think it's really powerful, and if you can manage to get 4 dragons onto the field with this guy, man, you can just keep making 1-mana dragons all day, and that seems pretty nuts. Moving on, we've got Righteous Valkyrie. Now, this is another card that leaked a while ago, but we've got the official spoiler now. This is a 2/4 for 3 mana. It's an Angel Cleric with flying. Whenever another Angel or Cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. As long as you have at least 7 more life than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. As if mono white life gain wasn't powerful enough, they get this guy. This seems like the perfect 3-drop for that deck, right? You're trying to get to 27 anyway, so that Speaker can generate 4/4 angels for you. And then when that happens, all of your creatures get +2/+2, including those angels that you're making. That seems pretty crazy. As long as you're building around properly and possibly making some cuts in that deck to up the amount of angels and clerics that you're including, you can really get a lot of triggers that gain a bunch of life equal to toughness with this guy and make it way easier to get to 27. So are we going to see a modified version of mono white that's more geared towards angels and clerics and really even more powerful than the version of mono white we have now? I think it's entirely possible. I don't think it'll be hard to cut some of the cards from that deck to make room for more of a threshold of angels and clerics. And the fact that you don't need to strictly devote yourself to just angels or clerics, but you can have a combination of both in the same deck and still trigger this, seems really, really powerful. So there's absolutely a place for this in Standard, and you will absolutely see it start to make an impact for sure. Moving on, we've got 2 more rares for the day and then 2 mythics. This first rare is Doomscar. Now this is probably the most powerful card that was spoiled, and for good reason. Most sets usually have some variant or another of Wrath of God, and this one is probably one of the most powerful we've seen in a while. Now this is a sorcery for 2 white and 3 colorless, destroy all creatures. Seems fine, right? Seems like a Wrath of God that costs an extra mana, but it has Foretell for 2 white and 1. And that makes it insanely powerful. A lot of times when you're playing Control, you might have a Wrath in hand and not want to use it yet anyway, because you want to give the opponent just one more turn to go wide, to go wider, so that you can get more value for your Wrath, more value when you wipe the board. So in those sorts of instances, being able to just tuck this aside for 2 mana and maybe get another play onto the field, maybe play another 2 mana spell, maybe play a Birth of Melodis or something like that, and then have this ready to go as soon as you need to use it and only have to pay 3 mana for it. Even just that 1 mana less than Wrath of God is super powerful and actually does a lot, should not be overlooked. Having that 1 extra mana after you Wrath in order to play a really relevant creature that helps you stabilize and recover from the board wipe, being able to do that the same turn you Wrath is really, really powerful. And just the 1 extra mana on your turn to go towards that can make all the difference in the world. Being able to play this on turn 6 and drop a 3-drop right after on the same turn and say go seems really good. So this card will absolutely be a staple of any Control decks that are running white moving forward, and I think it's even better than some people are giving it credit for, just because there's so many instances where you have your Wrath and you don't want to use it yet, where you don't really mind tucking it away for 2 mana and then maybe holding up 2 or 3 mana for a counterspell or something. So man, this card is good. But the last rare of the day is actually my favorite, and this is Dream Devourer. Now, Dream Devourer is a 0/3 Demon Cleric for 2 mana. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell has Foretell. Its Foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. Whenever you Foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2 attack until end of turn. Now, this guy is so much better than I think people realize. Giving everything in your hand Foretell just seems so fun. And with him having 3 toughness, he lives through things like Shock and Stomp. It's not as easy to get rid of him as some other 2-drops. So in particular, I think this guy is pretty busted when it comes to a card like, say, Agadeem's Awakening. So normally in the kind of deck you want to use Agadeem's Awakening in, you don't have a ton of lands, right? To get to that 5 or 6 mana threshold to play Agadeem's Awakening and actually get the kind of value you want out of it requires kind of waiting around, right? Normally that card is used in an aggro deck where you're going to lay your hand out pretty early and not need a ton of extra lands. So you get to this point where, like, you're waiting to play your Agadeem's Awakening because you're not quite there with your mana, and that is the perfect instance to just tuck it away for 2 mana, and then the next turn you can pay, like, say 4 for an Agadeem's Awakening where the X is 3, and you're getting back a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a 3-drop, not to mention powering this guy up. And that seems really powerful. Being able to reduce the cost of things like Call of the Death Dweller, or so many other cards that are, say, 3 mana with only 1 black and 2 being colorless, really makes this card interesting. And I feel like Call of the Death Dweller is a really good example where once these cards are tucked away for the 2 colorless mana, like, even if this guy dies, you can still play those cards as Foretell cards, right? So something like Call of the Death Dweller, you tuck it away for 2. Even when this guy dies, you then play it for just the 1 mana because it's already in an exile, waiting for you to be able to play it from exile because it's already been foretold. So it stays there. You play it for 1 mana. You get to bring back the Dream Devourer if you want, as well as a 1-drop, and then also give it Menace and Death Touch. So when you're foretelling stuff on other turns, it's swinging as an even bigger creature that's got Menace and Death Touch now. Like, I feel like there's ways for this card to really be abused. And at only 2 mana, and also having a relevant creature type like Cleric, this card could be really, really cool. And I'm excited to try to brew with it and see where it goes. But anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to the Mythics. Now, the second to last card of the day is another one that we saw leak a while back. Now, this is Resplendent Marshal. This is a 3/3 flyer for 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield or dies, you may exile another creature card from your graveyard. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control other than Resplendent Marshal that shares a creature type with the exiled card. This is sort of like a double Anthem effect in a way, right? First of all, a 3/3 flyer for 3 is really good and on rate to begin with. The fact that it has 2 relevant creature types in both Angel and Warrior. It works with Warrior synergies, it works with Angel synergies, and it works with Party synergies because of the Warrior creature type. All of that seems really good to begin with, but the fact that when it enters, as long as you're playing it with a tribal deck, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures. And all you need is a creature card in the graveyard to exile in order to do it. And that seems really good. It seems really easy to do in a deck that's going to be creature focused, that's going to want this type of Anthem effect anyway. And not to mention the fact that the Anthem effect itself isn't a traditional Anthem, but it's +1/+1 counters, which means things that care about counters add an extra layer of synergy to this. And then when it dies, you get to do it again. So this just seems like it has a ton of value all over it. And a card like this that adds a ton of synergy, but also works so well when you don't have that synergy lining up, just as a 3/3 flyer for 3 in a vacuum. Like, this thing is really, really good. I'm seeing a lot of powerful white come out of Kaldheim spoilers in these last couple days of spoiler season. And this guy's really, really powerful for sure. But we're going to move on to our last mythic of the day. Now, this is Orvar the All-Form. This is a 3/3 legendary creature This is a 3/3 legendary creature shapeshifter for 4 mana. It's blue and 3, and it has Changeling, of course. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. When a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. Now, I think this guy is really good. He has to be used in just the right deck, but there's so many things that make this guy really, really powerful. Imagine using him with Terror of the Peaks, right? And targeting your Terror of the Peaks with a Mythos of Luna. Now all of a sudden, you're making a copy from the Mythos, and then you're also making another copy from Orvar, and you're getting 2 more Terrors. They're both coming into play at the same time, and you're getting 20 damage on the stack. Like, that seems pretty bonkers. This guy works really well with fight spells. Any fight spells at all where you're targeting your creature and their creature. Now, not only are you removing one of their threats, but you're getting a copy of the creature that you targeted. This card is also really good with low-cost spells that give your creatures indestructible, or protection from a color, or anything that's going to save them, because not only do you make your opponent waste a removal spell trying to target a creature, and then you save it, but then you also get to make a copy of that creature. And I think the best of those options would probably be Malachor Rebirth. If you use something like Malachor Rebirth on the aforementioned Terror of the Peaks, they try to kill Terror. You Malachor Rebirth the Terror. You make a copy of the Terror of the Peaks, and then the original Terror of the Peaks comes back into play and triggers its enters the battlefield ability from the copy of the Terror. So there's just like so much you can do with this card. And I think it's going to be really, really cool to brew with it and see where you can go. One thing that's really overlooked is the second ability on this guy. When a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. That ability is really, really good because Rakdos with Kroxa is a huge thing in Standard right now. If they play Kroxa, you can choose to discard Orvar. And instead of discarding a card, you're now making a copy of any permanent in play for free. And that seems crazy. This seems like a really good sideboard card against any Rakdos deck running Kroxa. And I'm pretty sure you can even target the Kroxa itself and give yourself a copy of the Kroxa, which you won't be able to keep around, but it will make them discard a card and potentially lose a life. So at the very least, even if you didn't get a permanent onto the board yet that you want to copy, you can make them discard a card when they make you discard a card. And at the very least, that's pretty good. But the ceiling for this ability against something like Kroxa is crazy. They make you discard this and create a copy of some big, scary permanent that's on the field, and that could be enough to really win the game for you right there. So I really feel like this card is awesome and can be used in a lot of different ways. I think some of those ways might be a little too cute to actually see competitive constructive play, but not necessarily. And some of the ways, such as the ways it interacts with Kroxa, are definitely really great constructed. So I'm interested to brew with this. I think it's really great. Tell me what you think about this card. Is there anything I missed that you think this would be really cool for? Definitely comment down below. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and always make them scoop. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. We are pushing hard for that 1,000 subscriber mark, so please consider subscribing. Hit that button. There's a circle in the middle over there. Hit that. Subscribe. Tell all your friends to do it. Thank you. Also, give this video a like so more people can see it. If you'd like more PlayStation and console game coverage, we've got that down below. And if you'd like more Magic the Gathering coverage, there's more of that somewhere off over that way. Do all the things.